Alan Cooper wiped the leather dust from his hands as the afternoon sun filtered through the window of his small repair shop. The settlement market was busy today. Aliens of all kinds moved through the streets. There were tall blue beings with 4 arms. There were small furry creatures that chirped when they spoke. There were the Drachmer too. The dragon people. They walked with pride, their scales gleaming in the light, their heads held high. Alan had been running this shop for 3 years now. He fixed bags, belts, shoes, anything made of leather or fabric. The work was simple but honest. He liked the quiet rhythm of stitching and mending. It gave him time to think. Time to remember Earth. Time to forget the loneliness that sometimes crept into his chest during the long evenings. He was finishing a repair on a merchant's satchel when he first noticed the child. A small drachmer, no taller than Alan's waist, walked past the shop window. The child's scales were a dull bronze color, not the bright gold or silver that most drachmer displayed. The child carried a school bag over one shoulder. The strap was torn. It hung awkwardly, forcing the child to hold it with one clawed hand to keep it from falling. Alan watched as the child struggled down the street. No parent walked beside the small drachmer. No guardian waited at the corner. The child was alone. The next day Alan saw the child again. Same torn bag. Same struggling walk. Same loneliness in the way the small dragon kept their head down, avoiding eye contact with everyone. Alan noticed something else too. The child's water pouch had a hole in it. Water dripped out as the child walked, leaving a small trail on the ground. On the 3rd day the bag strap broke completely. Alan watched through his window as the child's books spilled onto the street. Other aliens walked past without helping. A group of adult drachmer actually stepped over the scattered books without even looking down. The child gathered everything alone, holding the broken bag in both arms, struggling to carry it all. That evening, after closing his shop, Alan could not stop thinking about the small dragon child. He knew he should mind his own business. Different species had different customs. Different ways of raising their young. But something about that child reminded him of himself. Years ago on Earth after his parents died. The feeling of being invisible. Of struggling alone while the world moved past without seeing. Alan made a decision. The next morning he arrived at his shop early. He waited by the window. Sure enough, the small drachmer child appeared, walking the same route as always. The child still carried the broken bag, clutching it against their chest. When the child passed, Alan noticed where they walked. Which direction they came from. Where they went. That night, Alan followed the route in reverse. He found the broken bag sitting outside a large building. A shelter, he realized. A place for children without families. The bag lay on the ground near the entrance, abandoned and useless. Alan picked it up and brought it back to his shop. He worked by lamplight, examining the damage. The strap had not just torn. It had been pulled apart, stressed beyond its limits. The material was cheap, the stitching poor. This was not a bag meant to last. This was the kind of thing given to those who did not matter. He felt anger rise in his chest. A child deserved better than this. Alan spent 2 hours that night repairing the bag. He replaced the entire strap with stronger material. He reinforced the corners where the fabric was wearing thin. He added extra stitching along the seams. When he finished, the bag looked almost new. Better than new, actually. It would hold now. It would last. Before dawn, Alan walked back to the shelter. He placed the repaired bag exactly where he had found it. Then he returned to his shop and waited. Morning came. Alan watched from his window, his coffee growing cold in his hand. The small dragon child emerged from the shelter building. The child saw the bag and stopped. For a long moment the child just stared at it. Then, slowly the child picked it up. Examined the new strap. Ran small claws over the reinforced corners. The child looked around, searching for whoever had done this. But the street was empty. After a moment the child put the bag on their shoulder. The strap held perfectly. For just a second, Alan thought he saw the child stand a little straighter. Walk a little less hunched. It was a small thing. A tiny change. But Alan felt something warm in his chest. Something he had not felt in a long time. 2 days later, the child's water pouch tore open completely. Alan watched it happen from his shop. The child did not cry or complain. Just accepted it. Went without water. That night, Alan found the broken pouch discarded near the shelter. He brought it to his shop and worked until midnight, creating a new one from scratch. He used materials designed for drachmer claws. Reinforced seams. Proper closures. He left it where the child would find it. The next morning the child discovered it and looked around again, searching for the mysterious helper. Alan stayed hidden inside his shop, watching through the gap in his curtains. This became a pattern, a routine. Every few days something of the child's would break or tear. The carrying satchel, the book strap, the small pouch for school supplies. Each time, Alan would find the broken item, repair it or replace it and leave it for the child to discover. He told himself it was just kindness, just helping someone in need. But deep down, Alan knew it was more than that. Each repair filled something inside him. Each time the child found the fixed item and that small face showed surprise and careful hope, Alan felt less alone. The child never asked for help, never sought out the person doing this. And Alan never revealed himself. It was better this way, he thought. The child had dignity, pride. Even abandoned, even struggling, the small Drachmer carried themselves with a quiet strength that Alan respected. He would not take that away by making this about gratitude or debt. Weeks passed. Alan learned the child's schedule. Morning walk to school. Afternoon return to the shelter. Sometimes the child stopped in the market looking at things but never buying. No money, Alan realized. The shelter probably gave the child just enough for basic needs. Nothing extra. He began noticing other things too. The child was always alone. No friends walked beside them. At the market, other Drachmer children traveled in groups, laughing and playing. But not this one. This small dragon walked a solitary path. Alan also noticed that the child took excellent care of the repaired items. The bag was kept clean. The pouches organized. The child treated these simple things like treasures. It made Alan's chest ache. Such a small thing to treasure. Such a small kindness to mean so much. One evening as Alan was closing his shop, he found something on his doorstep. A small stone polished smooth by water. Pretty with bands of color running through it. He picked it up, confused. Then he understood. The child had left it. A gift in return. A thank you from someone who had nothing else to give. Alan kept that stone on his workbench. He looked at it often as he worked. Some days later another appeared. A dried flower, carefully preserved. Then a piece of interesting wood, shaped by nature into a smooth curve. A conversation was happening. A silent exchange between two lonely souls. Alan fixed broken things. The child left small pieces of beauty. Neither spoke. Neither approached the other directly. But something was growing between them. Something fragile and important. Alan did not know the child's name. Did not know their story beyond what he could observe. But he knew this. Every day he would keep fixing what broke. Every day he would keep showing this child that someone saw them. Someone cared. Someone thought they mattered. It was a small thing. But sometimes small things make all the difference in the world. Alan was measuring leather for a new commission when he heard the voices outside his shop. Two Drachmer women stood near the fountain, their scales shining silver in the morning light. They spoke in their own language, but Alan had learned enough to understand basic words. He heard small one, and defective, and shelter. His hands stopped moving. One of the women gestured toward the street where the small dragon child usually walked. That one, she said, switching to common trade language. Abandoned by the Thornscale clan. Too small. Weak scales. They left it here 2 seasons ago. The other woman made a clicking sound with her tongue. Disgraceful to keep it visible. Should be hidden away. No clan wants to see their failures walking the streets. Alan's jaw tightened. His hands gripped the leather hard enough to leave marks. The women walked away, their conversation drifting to other topics. But Alan stood frozen, their words echoing in his mind. Abandoned. Defective. Failure. He looked at the small stone on his workbench. The one the child had left days ago. His throat felt tight. That afternoon, Alan visited the market vendor who sold fabric and materials. Mrs. Chin, a human woman who had been on this world even longer than Alan, greeted him with a smile. What do you need today, Alan? Tell me about the Drachmer, he said quietly. Their culture. Their families. Mrs. Chen's smile faded. She glanced around, then leaned closer. What do you want to know? Why would they abandon a child? She sighed. The Drachmer value strength above all else. Physical perfection. Size, scale quality, claw sharpness. It's how they measure worth. A child born small or weak brings shame to the clan. Some families hide such children. Others abandon them completely. That's cruel, Alan said. By our standards, yes. By theirs, it's mercy. They believe a weak Drachmer cannot survive in their society. Better to leave them where they might find another path than force them to fail among their own kind. Mrs. Chin shook her head. I don't agree with it. But that's their way. Alan bought extra materials that day. The strongest leather he could afford. Flexible but durable thread. Metal reinforcements designed for heavy use. Mrs. Chun watched him with knowing eyes but said nothing. Back in his shop, Alan began experimenting. He studied the items he had repaired for the child. He noticed the pattern of wear. Dragon claws were sharp, yes, but they also caught on normal fabric in specific ways. The child's claws were smaller than adult drachma, more delicate, but they still needed accommodations that standard bags did not provide. Alan worked late into the night, creating a prototype. A school bag with reinforced claw-resistant fabric at stress points. Straps designed to distribute weight evenly across a smaller dragon frame. Pockets positioned where small claws could reach easily. He made the closures simple but secure, knowing the child managed everything alone. When he finished, he held up the bag and examined it critically. It looked plain, almost rough. But it was strong. It would last. More importantly, it was made specifically for this child. For Kes. He had finally learned the name from children at the market, whispering about that Kes, the rejected one. Alan left the new bag by the shelter that night. In the morning, he watched from his usual spot by the window. Kes emerged and stopped dead at the sight of it. The child circled the bag warily as if it might disappear. Then, with slow, careful movements, Kes picked it up and examined every detail. The child put it on, adjusted the straps, tested the pockets. Alan saw something he had never seen before. Kes smiled. Just a small expression, quickly hidden, but it had been there. Real and genuine. That smile stayed with Alan all day. He found himself working with more energy, more purpose. He began planning the next item. A better water pouch. A carrying satchel for personal belongings. A small tool case. The gifts from Kes became more frequent too. Pretty leaves pressed flat. Smooth pebbles. A bird feather with iridescent colors. Kes left them on Alan's doorstep in the early morning before school. Alan began arranging them on a shelf in his shop. A collection of small beautiful things from someone who noticed beauty despite having so little. One day Alan found something different. A piece of paper, carefully folded. He opened it with trembling hands. Inside was a drawing. Simple, done with charcoal but clear. It showed a bag. The special bag Alan had made. Underneath, in careful letters, Kes had written one word in common trade language. Thank you. Alan sat down hard on his work stool. His vision blurred. He wiped his eyes quickly, looking around even though he was alone. The paper felt precious in his hands. Fragile and important. Kes knew. The child had always known someone was helping. And this was Kes saying it mattered. Alan kept that drawing in his pocket. He touched it sometimes during the day, reminding himself why he did this work. Why he spent his evenings crafting items for a child he had never spoken to. He began observing Kes more carefully, not just the broken items but the child's daily life. Kes walked to school alone each morning. During market hours, Kes sometimes lingered near the food stalls, looking at fresh fruit and cooked meals with quiet longing. The shelter fed the children, Alan knew, but probably just basic nutrition. Nothing special. Nothing delicious. Alan started leaving small packages of food with the repaired items. A wrapped sandwich. Fresh fruit. Sweet cakes from the human bakery. Nothing too much. Just enough to show someone cared about more than just functional needs. The gifts from Kes changed too. One morning, Alan found a small carved piece of wood on his doorstep. It was rough, clearly made by unpracticed hands, but it was shaped like a tool. A leather working knife. Kes was trying to make something useful in return, not just giving found objects. Alan felt his heart break a little. This child, who had nothing, who had been thrown away by their own family, was trying to give back. Trying to create value to match what they received. He wanted to tell Kes it was not necessary. That the child owed nothing. That kindness was not a transaction. But their silent conversation had its own rules. Its own dignity. Alan would not break that by forcing himself into Kes's life uninvited. Instead, he made his work better. He crafted a special carrying case designed for art supplies, noticing that Kes had drawn that picture. Maybe the child liked to draw. Needed materials. He included good paper and new charcoal sticks in a hidden pocket. Days later, a new drawing appeared on his doorstep. This one showed the market square with Alan's shop in the background. The detail was better. Kes was practicing, improving. The charcoal Alan had given was being put to good use. Their silent conversation continued. Alan fixed and created. Kes left gifts and drawings. Neither approached the other. Neither broke the unspoken boundary. But every exchange said the same thing. I see you. You matter. You are not alone. Alan learned more about Kes through careful observation. The child was smart, organized, careful with belongings. Kess walked the same route each day, suggesting a mind that liked routine and order. The child avoided other drachmer, staying to the edges of crowds, moving through spaces between groups rather than through them. It hurt to watch. This small dragon, walking through life like a ghost, trying to be invisible because visibility brought shame and mockery. But Alan also saw strength in it. Kess kept going. Kept walking to school. Kept living despite everything. One evening, Alan found a whole collection of items on his doorstep. Stones, leaves, a feather, a small piece of polished glass, and another drawing. This drawing showed two figures. One was clearly drachmer, small and thin. The other was human sitting at a workbench. Both figures were surrounded by small hearts. Alan pressed his hand to his mouth. He looked around the empty street, seeing no one. But somewhere out there, Kess was learning something important. Learning that being abandoned did not mean being unlovable. Learning that broken things could be fixed. Learning that someone, somewhere, thought a small rejected dragon child was worth time and effort and care. Alan went back into his shop and began working on something new. Something special. A bag designed not just for function but for beauty. Because Kess deserved beautiful things too. Their conversation would continue. Silent. Patient. Healing both of them in ways neither fully understood yet. The morning started like any other. Alan opened his shop, arranged his tools, and waited for his quiet glimpse of Kess walking to school. The small dragon appeared right on schedule, wearing the special bag Alan had crafted. Kess's posture seemed a bit straighter these days. A little less hunched. A little more confident. Alan smiled and turned back to his work. He had a good feeling about today. He was wrong. The afternoon brought chaos. Alan heard shouting from the direction of the school. Young voices, cruel and mocking. He stepped outside his shop and saw a crowd of children gathered in the market square. Most were drachmer, their scales bright gold and silver, their bodies large and strong. They formed a circle around something. Someone. Alan's stomach dropped. He started walking, then running. In the center of the circle stood Kess, small and trembling. 3 older drachmer students surrounded the child. One of them held Kess's bag, the special one Alan had made. The older student was tearing at it with sharp claws, ripping the careful stitching Alan had spent hours creating. "Look at this," the older student said loudly, holding up the damaged bag. "The little reject has human things now. Human-made trash for a trash dragon." Another student grabbed Kess's water pouch and threw it to the ground, stomping on it with heavy feet. "Are you a pet now? Does the human feed you scraps?" The third student circled Kess slowly. "Your clan was right to throw you away. You're not drachmer. You're just a broken thing that plays with human toys." Kess said nothing. The small dragon stood frozen, claws clenched, head down. The crowd of watching children laughed and whispered. Some looked uncomfortable, but none intervened. Even the few human children in the crowd stayed silent. Alan pushed through the circle. "Stop this now." The older students turned to him. The leader, a large golden-scaled drachmer, sneered. "This doesn't concern humans. This is clan business." "Kess has no clan," Alan said quietly. "And destroying someone's belongings is not business. It's cruelty." The golden student stepped closer, towering over Alan. "The reject dishonors all drachmer by accepting human charity. We are correcting that dishonor." Before Alan could respond, the student took Kess's bag and tore it completely in half. The sound of ripping fabric was loud in the sudden silence. The bag fell to the ground in pieces. Kess's books and papers scattered across the dirty street. "There," the student said. "Corrected." Alan looked at Kess. The small dragon's eyes were wide, filled with something between rage and despair. Then without a word, Kess turned and ran. The crowd parted, and the small figure disappeared down a side street. "Kess, wait." Alan called, but the child was already gone. The crowd dispersed quickly, as crowds do when their entertainment ends. The older students walked away laughing, proud of their cruelty. Alan stood alone in the empty square, looking at the destroyed bag and scattered belongings on the ground. He gathered everything carefully. The torn bag. The crushed water pouch. The books and papers now dirty and wrinkled. His hands shook as he worked. Not from fear. From anger. From the helpless rage of watching someone hurt a child and being unable to stop it. But anger would not help Kess now. Alan took a deep breath and forced himself to think. Where would a frightened, humiliated child go? Somewhere private. Somewhere safe. Somewhere no one else would find them. Alan had explored much of the settlement during his 3 years here. He knew the quiet places, the forgotten corners. There was an old shuttle bay at the edge of the colony, abandoned when newer facilities were built. Children sometimes played there, but mostly it sat empty. He walked quickly, carrying the broken items. The shuttle bay loomed ahead, its large doors half open, rusted and forgotten. Alan stepped inside. The space was dim, lit only by sunlight streaming through holes in the roof. Old equipment sat covered in dust. Broken shuttles waited for repairs that would never come. At first he saw nothing. Then he heard it. A sound he had never heard before. A small, broken sound that made his chest ache. Kes was crying. Alan found the small dragon in the back corner, wedged between two cargo containers. Kes's back was pressed against the wall, knees drawn up, arms wrapped around them. The child's whole body shook with sobs. Dragons did not cry easily, Alan knew. Their culture saw tears as the ultimate weakness. But here, alone and broken, Kes cried. Alan approached slowly, making noise so he would not startle the child. Kes's head jerked up, eyes red and wet. For a moment they just looked at each other. This was their first real meeting. The first time they had acknowledged each other directly. "May I sit?" Alan asked quietly. Kes said nothing, just stared. After a moment, the child looked away, which Alan took as permission. He sat down a few feet away, not too close, giving Kes space. He placed the broken items on the ground between them. For a long time neither spoke. Alan listened to Kes's breathing slowly return to normal. The sobs quieted. The shaking stopped. But the child still would not look at him. Finally, Alan picked up the torn bag. He pulled repair supplies from his pocket. Needle and thread. A patch of leather. He always carried these things now. He began working, his hands moving with practiced skill. "I'm Alan," he said softly as he worked. "I run the leather shop in the market." Kes's voice was small and rough. "I know who you are." "I know who you are too, Kes." Silence again. Alan continued stitching. The tear was bad but not impossible to fix. Nothing was ever truly impossible to fix if you had patience and cared enough to try. "They're right," Kes whispered. "I am defective. Broken. Worthless." Alan's hands paused. He looked at the small dragon, seeing the defeat in every line of that young body. "Do you know what I do, Kes? Every day in my shop." Kes did not answer. "I fix broken things," Alan continued, resuming his stitching. "People bring me bags that are torn. Shoes that are worn out. Belts that have snapped. They bring me things they think might be ruined beyond repair. And do you know what I tell them?" Still no answer, but Kes was listening. Alan could tell. "I tell them that broken does not mean worthless. It just means something needs attention. Needs care. Needs someone who sees its value and is willing to do the work to make it whole again." He finished one seam and started another. "This bag was broken. Those students tore it apart. By their logic, I should throw it away. Get a new one. But that would be wasteful. Foolish. Because this bag is still good. Still useful. It just needs to be repaired." Kes finally looked at him. "It's just a bag. Is it?" Alan met the child's eyes. "Or is it the bag that carried your books every day? The bag that kept your things safe? The bag that someone made specifically for you because they thought you deserved something that fit you properly?" Kes's eyes widened slightly. "Things have value beyond their perfection," Alan said gently. "A bag has value because it serves a purpose. Because someone uses it and needs it. Because it exists in relationship with someone who cares about it." He held up the partially repaired bag. "This bag is valuable because it's yours, Kes. Not despite being torn, but because it can be mended. Because it keeps going even after being hurt." A tear rolled down Kes's scaled cheek. "My clan said I was too small. Too weak. That I would never be strong like real Drakmer." "Strong comes in many forms," Alan said. He gestured to the bag. "See the stitching? It's small. Precise. It requires patience and careful hands. A large, strong hand would struggle with this detail work. Sometimes being small is exactly what's needed. But everyone says." "Everyone is wrong sometimes," Alan interrupted gently. "Whole societies can be wrong. Just because many people believe something does not make it true." He finished the last stitch and held out the bag. It was not perfect. The repairs showed. But it was whole again. Functional. Still useful. Kes took the bag slowly, running small claws over the new stitches. "Why do you help me? You don't even know me." Alan smiled. "I know you notice beautiful things. You collect stones and leaves. You draw. You take care of what you're given. You keep trying even when things are hard. I know enough. I'm not worth all this trouble. Kes, listen to me." Alan's voice was firm now. "You are not broken. You are not defective. You are not worthless. You are a young dragon who was treated cruelly by people who should have protected you. That is their failure, not yours. Their inability to see your value does not decrease your value. It only shows their blindness. Kes stared at him, and Alan saw something shift in those young eyes. A tiny spark of hope, fragile but real. You've been leaving me gifts, Alan continued, his voice softer now. Beautiful things. Drawings. You didn't have to do that. But you did because you have a generous heart. That's strength, Kes. Real strength. The kind that matters. They sat together as the afternoon light shifted through the broken roof. Alan repaired the water pouch next, then carefully cleaned the books and papers. Kes watched him work, silent but present. Finally, Kes spoke. What if they destroy everything again? Then I'll fix it again, Alan said simply. As many times as it takes. Broken things deserve to be mended. And you, Kes, deserve someone who won't give up on you. For the first time since Alan had known this child, Kes smiled at him directly. A real smile, small but genuine. Thank you, Alan. You're welcome, Kes. They stayed there a while longer, two outcasts sitting in an abandoned place, both understanding what it meant to be broken and what it meant to be seen as valuable anyway. The silence between them was comfortable now. Peaceful. When they finally left the shuttle bay together, walking side by side back toward the settlement, something fundamental had changed. Their silent conversation had become a real one, and neither of them was quite as alone anymore. The day after the shuttle bay, Alan waited outside his shop as school ended. He saw Kes walking slowly down the street, carrying the repaired bag carefully. The small dragon still walked alone, still kept to the edges of the crowd, but something was different. Kes's head was up, eyes forward instead of down. When Kes reached the shop, Alan was standing in the doorway. I have a question for you, he said. Kes stopped, looking uncertain. What question? Would you like to learn leatherworking? I could use some help in the afternoons. The work isn't hard, but it needs careful hands. Alan paused. I can't pay much, but I can teach you a skill. And there's always food. I make too much dinner anyway. Kes stared at him. You want me to work here? In your shop? If you want to. No pressure. But the offer stands. For a long moment, Kes said nothing. Then very quietly, yes, I would like that. That afternoon, Kes's real education began. Alan started with the basics. How to hold a needle properly. How to measure thread. How to judge the thickness of leather. Simple things but important. Foundation skills that everything else would build on. Kes's small claws struggled at first with the human-sized tools. Alan watched, noting where the difficulties were. That evening, after Kes left for the shelter, he worked late into the night. He modified tools to fit smaller hands. Made custom needles with grips that dragon claws could hold comfortably. Created measuring tools scaled for Kes's size. The next day, Kes arrived and found the modified tools waiting. The small dragon picked up a needle and tested it. The fit was perfect. Kes looked up at Alan with wide eyes. Everyone deserves tools that fit them properly, Alan said simply. They worked together in comfortable silence. Alan demonstrated a simple stitch on scrap leather. Kes watched intently, then tried to copy it. The first attempt was clumsy. The second was better. By the fifth try, the stitches were neat and even. Alan felt a surge of excitement. Kes, look at this. Look how straight your stitches are. Kes examined the work critically. They're acceptable. They're better than acceptable. They're excellent. Alan held up his own practice piece from when he was learning. This is what mine looked like at your age. Yours are much better. A small smile appeared on Kes's face. Pride, carefully hidden but real. Over the following weeks, they fell into a routine. Kes came to the shop every day after school. Alan would have a snack ready, something filling and good. They would eat together, and Kes would tell Alan about school. Most days were hard. Other students still mocked the small dragon. But Kes was learning to endure it, to let the words wash over without sinking in. Then they would work. Alan taught new skills gradually. How to cut leather in straight lines. How to punch holes for lacing. How to choose the right material for different jobs. Kes absorbed everything like a sponge, asking questions, practicing constantly, improving rapidly. Alan began to notice something interesting. The detail work that he sometimes struggled with was easy for Kes. The small precise stitches. The tight corners. The delicate patterns. Kes's small claws, the very thing the Drachmer had called a weakness, were actually an advantage for this work. Look at this, Alan said one day, holding up a wallet Kes had just finished. The stitching was flawless. Tiny, even, perfect. I can't do work this fine. My hands are too big, my fingers too thick. But you can do it easily. Kes looked at the wallet, then at Alan. Really? Really? This is master-level detail work, Kes. You have a natural gift for this. Something shifted in Kes's expression. A realization forming. The thing that made the child different, that made other Drachma reject them, was actually valuable in this context. Being small was not a weakness here. It was a strength. Word spread through the settlement. People noticed the small Drachma child working in Alan's shop. Some approved. Mrs. Chin from the fabric store came by with encouraging words and free materials. A few human families brought their children to meet Kes, teaching them that friendship crossed species lines. But others disapproved. Drachma adults muttered about shame and impropriety. Some refused to bring their business to Alan's shop anymore, unwilling to support someone who helped a defective child. Alan lost customers. He did not care. Kes mattered more than profit. One afternoon, a well-dressed human merchant brought in an expensive bag for repair. Complex stitching had come loose in several places. Alan examined it and frowned. This will take very careful work. The leather is delicate. Can you do it? The merchant asked. Alan looked at Kes, who was watching from the workbench. Actually, my apprentice can do it better than I can. Would you mind if Kes handles this repair? The merchant looked doubtful, seeing the small dragon. An apprentice? A child? Watch, Alan said simply. He gave Kes the bag and the appropriate tools. Kes examined the damage carefully, planning the approach. Then small claws began to work. The needle moved with precision and confidence. Each stitch was placed perfectly. The work was so fine, so detailed, that the repair became nearly invisible. The merchant watched in silence, his skepticism slowly transforming into amazement. When Kes finished, he examined the bag closely, turning it in the light. This is extraordinary work, he said finally. Better than the original stitching. He looked at Kes with new respect. You have real talent, young one. Kes ducked their head, embarrassed but pleased. Thank you, sir. The merchant paid double the usual price and left, promising to recommend Alan's shop to his associates. After he was gone, Alan turned to Kes. Do you see? Your work speaks for itself. It doesn't matter what others say about you. What matters is what you can do. What you choose to do. Kes nodded slowly, absorbing this lesson. More customers came, drawn by word of the exceptional detail work. Alan made sure everyone knew that Kes did the fine stitching. The child's confidence grew with each successful repair, each satisfied customer, each compliment on the quality of work. At school things remained difficult. But Kes began responding differently to mockery. When students called the child weak, Kes thought about the master-level stitching work. When they said small claws were useless, Kes remembered the repairs those claws completed that larger hands could not manage. One day Kes came to the shop excited. Alan, I told my teacher about working here. She asked if I could repair the school's old history books. They're falling apart and she said they need someone with delicate touch. That's wonderful, Alan said. What did you tell her? I said yes. I can do it, right? Absolutely. We'll work on them together. They spent 2 weeks repairing 20 old books. Kes's stitching held the ancient pages gently but securely. The small claws could work between fragile sheets without damaging them. When the books were returned, the teacher displayed them proudly, telling everyone that Kes had saved these important historical texts. Some students began to look at Kes differently. Not all of them. Not even most of them. But a few. A few children saw past the small size and weak scales to the skill and dedication underneath. One brave human girl named Sarah started sitting with Kes at lunch. Then another child joined, a quiet alien boy with blue fur. Slowly, very slowly, Kes was building a small circle of friends. Children who valued kindness and skill over physical perfection. In the shop, Alan and Kes developed an easy partnership. Alan handled the heavy work and customer interactions. Kes focused on detailed repairs and delicate projects. They complemented each other perfectly. Alan's strength and experience combined with Kes's precision and attention to detail created something better than either could achieve alone. We make a good team, Alan said one evening as they cleaned up the shop together. Yes, Kes agreed. We do. The small dragon paused, then added quietly, Alan? Thank you. For seeing me. For teaching me. For showing me I'm not worthless. Alan's throat tightened. He crouched down to Kes's level, looking the child in the eyes. You were never worthless, Kes. You just needed someone to help you see your own value. But it was always there. Always. Kes stepped forward and did something unexpected. The small dragon hugged Alan. It was awkward, all scales and sharp edges, but it was genuine. Alan hugged back carefully, his heart full. I've been alone my whole life, Kes whispered. I thought that's how it would always be. But now I have you. I have this place. I have purpose. You have more than you know, Alan said. You have talent. You have kindness. You have strength that your clan was too blind to recognize. And yes, you have me. For as long as you want. They stood there in the quiet shop, two outcasts who had found each other, who had built something meaningful together. Outside, the settlement continued its busy life. But inside this small space, surrounded by leather and tools and the smell of their shared work, they had created something rare and precious. They had created home. The settlement was decorated with banners and flags. Important visitors were coming. A Drachmer delegation from the homeworld, here to negotiate new trade agreements. The markets buzzed with preparation. Vendors displayed their finest goods. Officials rushed about making arrangements. This was a big event for the small colony. Alan watched the preparations with unease. More Drachmer meant more judgment. More eyes on Kess. More opportunities for cruelty. Maybe you should stay at the shelter during the visit, he suggested carefully as they worked in the shop. Just until they leave. Kess's hands stopped moving. You want me to hide? Not hide. Just avoid unnecessary conflict. I've been hiding my whole life, Alan. I'm tired of it. Kess's voice was quiet but firm. This is my home too. I have as much right to be here as anyone. Alan nodded slowly. You're right. I'm sorry. That was fear talking, not wisdom. The delegation arrived 3 days later. 12 Drachmer, all tall and imposing with brilliant scales of gold, silver, and bronze. They walked through the settlement like they owned it, examining everything with critical eyes. The colony administrator, a nervous human named Mr. Peterson, followed them around apologetically. Alan kept his shop open as normal. Kess came after school as always. They worked quietly, aware of the tension in the air but refusing to change their routine. On the second day, trouble found them. 3 members of the delegation walked past Alan's shop. They saw Kess through the window working at the bench. The dragons stopped, stared, then entered the shop. What is this? The lead delegate demanded. She was tall with silver scales that gleamed like metal. Her voice was sharp and cold. Alan stood up, placing himself between the delegates and Kess. This is my shop. Can I help you with something? That child? The silver dragon pointed at Kess. That is Kess of the former Thornscale line. A reject. Why is it here in public, displaying its defectiveness for all to see? Kess is my apprentice, Alan said calmly. A skilled leather worker. The silver dragon's eyes narrowed. Skilled? That small broken thing? Impossible. You mock us with this display. I mock no one. Kess does excellent work. Better than mine in many areas. Another delegate with golden scales stepped forward. Administrator Peterson should have removed this reject before our arrival. Its presence insults our delegation. We are here to conduct serious business, not witness the failures of our species being paraded about. Kess stood frozen at the workbench, head down, trembling slightly. Alan felt anger rise in his chest, hot and fierce. Kess stays, he said firmly. This is not Drachmer homeworld. This is a colony settlement where all species are equal. Kess has done nothing wrong and will not be removed. The silver dragon drew herself up to full height, towering over Alan. You overstep, human. You do not understand our culture, our standards. This reject brings shame to all Drachmer. The only shame I see is in how you treat a child, Alan shot back. The confrontation was interrupted by Administrator Peterson rushing in, sweating and nervous. Please, there's no need for conflict. Perhaps we can discuss this calmly? There is nothing to discuss, the silver dragon said coldly. Either the reject is removed from public spaces during our visit, or we terminate negotiations and leave. Peterson looked stricken. The trade agreement was worth millions. Jobs depended on it. The colony's future depended on it. He looked at Alan with pleading eyes. I'm sorry, Alan. Just for a few days. Please. Alan opened his mouth to argue, but Kess spoke first. It's okay, Alan. I'll stay at the shelter until they leave. Kess, no. It's okay, Kess repeated, gathering tools and putting them away carefully. I don't want to cause trouble for everyone. The small dragon walked out of the shop, head held high despite everything. The delegates watched with satisfaction. Alan watched with a breaking heart. For 2 days Kess did not come to the shop. Alan worked alone, his hands moving automatically while his mind churned with anger and helplessness. The delegation continued their negotiations in the settlement's main hall, discussing trade routes and cargo manifests and profit margins. On the 3rd day, disaster struck. Mr. Peterson came running to Alan's shop, his face pale with panic. "Alan, I need your help. Emergency. Right now." Alan followed him to the negotiation hall. Inside, the room was in chaos. Papers were scattered across a large table. The delegates stood in angry clusters, arguing loudly. At the center of the table sat a large ceremonial bag, split open, its precious contents spilling out. "What happened?" Alan asked. "The treaty bag," Peterson explained frantically. "It contains the original trade agreements, signed by both governments. During the ceremony, someone bumped the table. The bag fell and split open. The documents are getting damaged. We need to repair it immediately, but it's too delicate. The Drachmer craftsmen tried, but their claws are too large. They keep making it worse." Alan examined the bag. It was ancient, made of fine leather with intricate stitching. The split ran along a seam, but the leather around it was fragile with age. One wrong move would tear it further. The documents inside were already crumbling at the edges. "This needs very delicate work," Alan said. "Small, precise stitches. I can try, but honestly my hands might be too large too." He studied the damage, his mind working. There was one person who could do this repair. One person with the exact skills needed. Small claws. Perfect precision. Master-level detail work. But that person had been banned from the building. Alan looked at the silver delegate who had demanded Kessa's removal. She stood with arms crossed, furious and helpless. "I know someone who can fix this," Alan said quietly. "Then get them." Peterson practically shouted. "It's Kess." Silence fell over the room. The silver delegate's face hardened. "Absolutely not. We will not." "You will not what?" Alan interrupted. "Save your own treaty? Preserve your government's agreement? Your craftsmen cannot do this. I cannot do this. But Kess can. I've seen that child repair work far more delicate than this." "It is a reject," the golden delegate said. "It cannot possibly." "Can't, or you just don't want to admit it can?" Alan's voice was hard. "Your pride is standing in the way of your duty. That bag needs repair in the next hour, or those documents will be too damaged to certify. You have one choice. Swallow your pride and let Kess help, or explain to your government why you let centuries of diplomatic work crumble because you were too arrogant to accept help from a child." Peterson looked between Alan and the delegates. "Please. We need this treaty. All of us need this treaty." The silver delegate's jaw clenched. She stared at the damaged bag, at the crumbling documents, at her own craftsmen standing helplessly aside. Finally she spoke through gritted teeth. "Fine. Bring the reject. But this changes nothing about its status." Alan ran. He sprinted through the settlement to the shelter, found Kess in the common room reading. "I need you. Right now. Bring your tools." They ran back together. When they entered the negotiation hall, every eye turned to them. The Drachmer delegates stared at Kess with a mixture of disgust and desperate hope. Kess stared back, small and scared but standing firm. Alan guided Kess to the table. "Can you fix it?" Kess examined the bag carefully, small claws gentle on the ancient leather. The child's eyes moved over every detail, assessing, planning. Finally Kess nodded. "I can fix it, but I need everyone to step back. Give me room to work." The crowd moved back. Kess pulled out the modified tools Alan had made, the ones perfectly sized for small dragon claws. The room watched in absolute silence as Kess began to work. The child's claws moved with incredible precision. Each stitch was placed perfectly, pulling the split seam together without stressing the fragile leather. Kess worked slowly, carefully, with complete focus. The needle slipped through the old material like it was passing through air. 15 minutes passed. Then 30. No one spoke. No one moved. They watched this small defective dragon do what their master craftsman could not. Finally Kess tied off the last stitch and stepped back. "Done. The document should be safe now. But handle the bag gently. The leather is very old." Peterson rushed forward, examining the repair with a magnifying glass. His face broke into a huge smile. "It's perfect. Completely perfect. You can barely see where it was damaged." He carefully transferred the documents to a protective case, then held up the repaired bag for all to see. The stitching was invisible unless you looked very closely. The bag was whole again, saved from destruction. The silver delegate approached slowly. She stared at the bag, then at Kess. Her expression was unreadable. "How did you do this?" she asked quietly. "Small stitches," Kess said simply. "Patient work. My claws are small enough to work in tight spaces without damaging the surrounding material." What you call weakness, Alan taught me to see as strength. The delegate was silent for a long moment. Then she did something unexpected. She bowed her head slightly to Kes. Just a small gesture but significant. You have saved these negotiations, she said formally. The homeworld government thanks you for your skill. Kes stood straighter, surprise evident on the small dragon's face. The golden delegate stepped forward too, examining the bag closely. I have been a craftsman for 40 years. This is master-level work. From a child. From one we called defective. He shook his head slowly. Perhaps we have been wrong about what defines defectiveness. Perhaps you have, Alan said quietly. The silver delegate looked at him then back at Kes. The child may remain visible during our visit. We will not demand otherwise. It was not an apology. Not acceptance. But it was acknowledgement. Progress. Kes gathered the tools carefully, hands shaking slightly with released tension. Alan put a hand on the small dragon's shoulder. Well done, he said softly. I'm proud of you. Kes looked up at him with shining eyes. I was so scared. I know. But you did it anyway. That's what real strength looks like. They walked out of the hall together, leaving the delegates to their negotiations. Word spread quickly through the settlement. The rejected dragon child had saved the treaty. The defective one had succeeded where master craftsmen failed. That evening, in the quiet of the shop, Kes and Alan worked side by side as always. But something had shifted. Kes worked with new confidence, new certainty of worth. They still think I'm lesser, Kes said quietly. Even after today. Some do. Some always will, Alan agreed. But others saw the truth today. And more importantly, you know the truth. That's what matters most. Kes nodded, understanding settling in. The child's value was not determined by others' recognition. It existed independent of their judgment. Outside, the settlement continued its evening routines. But inside the small leather shop, a rejected child had proven something important. Not to the delegates. Not even to the settlement. Kes had proven it to themselves. And that changed everything. The delegation stayed in the settlement for 3 more days. During that time, something changed. The Drakmer delegates watched Kes work in Alan's shop. They saw the skill, the dedication, the growing confidence. They saw customers praising the small dragon's craftsmanship. They saw a child who had been thrown away now thriving. On the final day before their departure, the silver delegate came to the shop alone. Alan was helping a customer, and Kes was working at the bench on a delicate repair. The delegate stood in the doorway watching silently. When the customer left, she stepped inside. I wish to speak with Kes. Privately. Alan looked at Kes, who nodded slowly. It's okay, Alan. I'll be fine. Alan stepped outside but stayed close, watching through the window. The silver delegate approached the workbench. Up close, Kes seemed even smaller next to her imposing height. My name is Sira, the delegate said. I was present when your clan abandoned you. I said nothing then. I followed tradition without question. She paused. I was wrong. Kes's hand stopped moving. The small dragon looked up at her. What you did with the treaty bag showed exceptional skill, Sira continued. Skill that is rare even among our master craftsmen. The Homeworld Council has authorized me to make you an offer. Return with us. We will enroll you in our finest craft schools. You will have teachers, resources, a place among the artisan class. Kes stared at her. You want me back? After throwing me away? We made an error in judgment. Your size is not a weakness in craftsmanship. It is an advantage. We see that now. We wish to correct our mistake. For a long moment, Kes said nothing. Alan watched from outside, his heart in his throat. This was everything Kes had been denied. Acceptance from the Drakmer. A place in their society. Recognition. Finally, Kes spoke quietly. No, thank you. Sira's eyes widened. No? You refuse. Yes, I refuse. Kes's voice grew stronger. You threw me away when I was small and scared and alone. You decided I was worthless without ever knowing me. Now that I'm useful to you, you want me back. But you don't want me. You want my skills. We are offering you a great honor. You're offering me a place in a society that measures worth by physical perfection and utility, Kes interrupted. Alan gave me a place in his life when I had nothing to offer him. When I was just a broken child with torn bags. He saw value in me before I could do anything useful. That's the difference. Sira was silent, her expression troubled. I have a home here, Kes continued. I have someone who cares about me, not about what I can do for them. I have friends. I have purpose. I have a future. Why would I trade that for your offer? You would be among your own kind. My own kind abandoned me, Kes said simply. The people here are my kind now. The ones who stayed when you left. Syrah studied the small dragon for a long moment. Then she bowed her head. You are wiser than many adults I know. I hope someday our society learns what you already understand. That worth is not measured in scales and size. She turned to leave, then paused. The offer will remain open. If you ever change your mind, the homeworld will welcome you. I won't change my mind, Kes said. But thank you. After Syrah left, Alan came back inside. He looked at Kes with wonder and pride. You turned them down. Of course I did. Kes returned to the repair work. This is my home. Alan felt warmth spread through his chest. Kes, I want to ask you something important. I've been thinking about this for a while. I want to become your legal guardian. Officially. If you want that too. Kes's claws trembled. The small dragon set down the tools carefully. You want to be my family? Legally? I want to be your family in every way that matters. Legal is just making it official. Kes launched off the stool and hugged Alan fiercely. Yes, I want that. They held each other in the quiet shop, two beings from different species who had found in each other what they had both been missing. Family. Belonging. Home. The paperwork took 2 weeks. Administrator Peterson helped rush it through. Mrs. Chen brought a cake to celebrate. Sarah and several of Kes's new friends from school came to the shop with small gifts. It was a simple celebration but filled with genuine joy. That evening, as they cleaned up after the party, Kes spoke quietly. Alan, I need to tell you something. I always knew. Knew what? That you were fixing my bags. From the very beginning. I always knew it was you. Alan stopped sweeping. You knew. I would leave them broken and they would appear fixed. Your shop was the only leather shop nearby. It wasn't hard to figure out. Kes smiled. But I never said anything because I understood what you were doing. You were giving me dignity. Letting me discover the repairs instead of forcing me to accept charity directly. Alan sat down slowly. Why didn't you say something? Because it was perfect the way it was. You were teaching me something important. That kindness doesn't always announce itself. That help can be gentle and quiet. That someone could care about me without needing recognition or gratitude. Kes's eyes were bright. You fixed my bags every day, but you were really fixing me. My heart. My belief in myself. My hope for the future. Alan's vision blurred. Kes. You showed me I was worth fixing, Kes continued. Not because I could do anything useful. Not because I was perfect. Just because I existed and needed help. That's a lesson I'll carry forever. They sat together in the comfortable silence of the shop, surrounded by tools and leather and the evidence of their shared work. Outside, the settlement went about its evening business. But inside this small space, 2 hearts had been made whole. In the weeks that followed, something unexpected happened. Other children began appearing at the shop. A human boy whose parents had died. A blue-furred alien girl with a learning disability her species saw as shameful. A small insect-like child who had been abandoned for being the wrong color. Word had spread. The leather shop was a safe place. A place where being different, being broken, being rejected did not define your worth. Alan and Kes welcomed them all. The shop became busier, noisier, filled with young voices and laughter. Alan taught anyone who wanted to learn. Kes became a teacher too, showing the younger children that their differences could be strengths. A young human girl struggled with fine motor control. But she had excellent color sense. Kes taught her to dye leather, creating beautiful patterns. The insect child's multiple small limbs, seen as awkward by their kind, were perfect for holding complex projects steady. The blue-furred girl's slow processing was actually careful, methodical thought that prevented mistakes. Each child discovered that what made them different could also make them valuable. Each found purpose and belonging. The shop expanded. Alan and Kes hired help. More workbenches appeared. More tools. More projects. They took on apprentices formally, teaching skills but also teaching worth. Teaching that broken things deserve to be mended. That rejection was not the end of the story. 1 year after becoming Kes's legal guardian, Alan stood in the doorway of the shop watching the organized chaos inside. 6 children worked at various stations. Kes moved between them, offering guidance and encouragement. The small dragon had grown some, though still small by Drachmer standards. But Kes stood tall now, confident and sure. Mrs. Chen appeared beside Alan, watching the scene with a smile. You've built something special here. Kes and I built it together, Alan corrected. You've given these children hope. A future. Family. Alan nodded. They've given me the same. I was alone before Kes. Going through the motions of living but not really alive. These children filled a hole I didn't know I had. Inside, Kes was showing a young boy how to measure leather properly. The child struggled, frustrated with his shaking hands. A neurological condition that made fine motor control difficult. It's okay to go slow, Kes said patiently. Accuracy matters more than speed. Your hands shake, yes, but they're also gentle. That gentleness means you won't damage delicate materials. That's valuable. The boy tried again, slower this time. The measurement was perfect. His face lit up with pride. Alan felt his throat tighten with emotion. This was what it was all about. Not perfect children doing perfect work, but broken children learning they were whole anyway. Learning that their cracks could let light through. That their differences made them special, not lesser. That evening, after all the children had gone to their homes or shelters, Alan and Kes worked together on a special project. A new sign for the shop. Kes had designed it and they crafted it together. The sign was simple. Beautiful leather work with careful stitching. It read, Cooper and Kes Leather Works, every broken thing deserves a chance to be made whole. They hung it above the door as the sun set. Stepping back, they admired their work. It's perfect, Kes said. Yes, Alan agreed. It really is. Kes leaned against Alan's side. Thank you. For everything. For seeing me. For fixing me. For giving me a family. Alan put his arm around the small dragon's shoulders. Thank you for letting me. For teaching me that fixing broken things fixes the person doing the fixing too. We healed each other, Kes. They stood together as the settlement lights began to glow in the gathering darkness. Two souls who had been broken and alone, now whole and together. They had built more than a business. More than a family. They had built proof that love and patience and seeing value in the rejected could transform lives. Inside the shop, the tools waited for tomorrow's work. More repairs. More teaching. More children who needed to learn they mattered. The work would never be finished. There would always be broken things needing to be mended. Broken hearts needing to be healed. But Alan and Kes were ready. Together they could fix anything. Because they had already fixed the most important thing. Each other. And that made all the difference.